from the Aam Aadmi Party, and also simultaneously raising the question on the CVC report which has been submitted to the Delhi government, where no report submitted or further approval given by the Delhi government's department in that regard. So BJP is also mounting pressure on Aam Aadmi Party, and therefore we had seen this protest at Arvind Kejriwal's residence from all BJP MLAs of Delhi, and also their Member of Parliament Ramesh Viduri.
Yes, and these protests being carried out by the BJP. Is the BJP looking at more such protests? Because now it looks like that Mr. Biduri is climbing up on that barricade. They'll be trying to break the barricade, and the sense is certainly that. And the BJP will be continuing to hold these protests in several parts of the national capital. They are also upping their ante in Gujarat, where the opposition space increasingly is being occupied by the Aam Aadmi Party, also in the state of Himachal. Remember, Aam Aadmi Party has been saying that the reason why Satyendra Jain has been targeted and he has been behind bars is because he was Himachal in charge of the Aam Aadmi Party and election in charge. And remember, Himachal and Gujarat go to polls later this year. Let's listen in to what's happening on the ground.
आप लोग संघर्ष करेंगे तभी हमारा संघर्ष फलीभूत है भैया। बिदुड़ी के संघर्ष करने का कुछ होने वाला है। दिल्ली के 2 करोड़ लोगों को संघर्ष करना पड़ेगा। इसीलिए हम सब लोग लाइन से महात्मा गांधी की समाधि की तरफ कूच करेंगे। हमारे विधायक वो हमारे साथ होंगे। जो लोग थोड़े से ओल्ड एज हैं, चलने में सक्षम नहीं है, वो गाड़ियों को पीछे पीछे काफिले में लेकर आएंगे। अपनी अपनी गाड़ियों को बसों में जो है वो बसों से बोल देंगे कि वो लोग राजघाट महात्मा गांधी की समाधि की तरफ कूच करेंगे। हम सब लोग मैं पूरे एक बार आपके संघर्ष के लिए मुझे लगता है SHO साहब ACP साहब से ही अब आने वाले प्रदर्शन में हमें झगड़ना पड़ेगा। आप भी शामिल हो इस राजनीति में, इसका मतलब कहीं ना कहीं आप कहाँ जाना है हमने, कहाँ जाना है? महात्मा बापू जी की समाधि पर जाना है। उनके वाले पद पर रहते हुए रेल के सामने 26 जनवरी के दिन धरने पर बैठ गए थे केजरीवाल। याद करें ना केजरीवाल उस दिनों को, संवैधानिक पद पर। के लोग विपक्ष में हैं, हमारा दायित्व बनता है, कोई भ्रष्टाचार अगर कोई कर रहा है तो दिल्ली के लोगों ने माने मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में साथ हमें सांसद जिताकर दिए हैं, तो हमारा कर्तव्य नहीं है दिल्ली के 2.5 करोड़ लोगों दिल्ली को लूटता रहेगा, हम उंगली डालकर सोते रहेंगे? ऐसा कैसे हो जाएगा?
वो ये कह रहे हैं कि हम तो जनता को फायदा नहीं लेती रहा हमें जा रहा है, जबकि ये हकीकत फायदा पहुंचाने वाले हैं राजस्व को।
फिर वापस क्यों ली? थूक कर चाटा क्यों? अगर ये फायदा पहुंचाने वाली थी, पहले तिमाही में 2375 करोड़ रुपया प्रॉफिट आना था और प्रॉफिट आया 1100 करोड़ के करीब, तो वो घाटा कहाँ? और शराब की सेल बढ़ी थी तो फायदा हुआ और नुकसान हुआ है तो आपको फिर वापस लेनी पड़ी पॉलिसी। तो फायदा पहुंचाने वाली नहीं थी ना। अगर हम पहले इस पॉलिसी पर रोक लगाने की मांग करते तो ये फिर कैश करते कि देखो भाजपा वाले हम काम करना चाहते, करने नहीं देते। अब इनको 1 साल का टाइम दिया, ये नहीं कर पाए। अभी तो और बहुत हो, एजुकेशन में 27 करोड़ का एक ही ठेकेदार को ठेका दे दिया, बगैर बिट डाले हुए। वो समय पर कमरे बना नहीं पाया, उसको 2 साल का टाइम दे गए और पहले 27 करोड़ का टेंडर था, कह दिया 54 करोड़ देंगे बना। आपके फूफा लगते थे वो, क्यों दिया? क्यों बिट नहीं? ये एजुकेशन का है। तो इसीलिए हर स्टेज पर 1 साल इनको काम करने दिया गया था और इन्होंने दबा के भ्रष्टाचार किया है।
लेकिन अन्ना हजारे जो उनके एक तरह से गुरु रहे, सामाजिक क्रांतिकारी आंदोलन करते समय साथ में रहे हैं, वो भी अब सवाल खड़े कर रहे हैं इस तरह से, तो आप इसे कैसे देखते हैं?
देखो, अन्ना जी के कंधे को यूज करके यहाँ पर आया था ये वो प्रवृत्ति का आदमी है कि सीढ़ी बनाओ और छत पे चढ़ के सीढ़ी में लात मार दो, नीचे डाल दो। लेकिन ये भूल जाता है कि आसमान में उड़ने वाला जो पंछी है, अंतोगत्वा उसको रेस्ट उस समुद्री जहाज पर ही मिलता है। पूरे समुद्र में घूम लेता है आसमान पे, लेकिन उसी समुद्री जहाज पर रुकता है। तो ये भूल गया कि जिस सीढ़ी को लात मारकर
His win over Pakistan in true Bollywood style. We'll leave you with this. Heavy rains in Karnataka have led to widespread destruction, even shutting down large sections of the Bangalore-Mysore highway.
The 10-lane Bengaluru-Mysuru highway, which is set to open to the public in October, is now completely inundated. A private bus moving from Bengaluru to Kollegala got stuck on the highway. Nearly 50 passengers were rescued by locals who used tractors to pull the bus out of the water. From water tankers to cars, vehicles were either washed away or completely submerged in the flood waters. The large-scale flooding is a result of incessant rains in the Ramanagara district in the last 24 hours. But many activists claim the flooding of the highway is because the road has been constructed across many lakes. So when the lakes become full, the excess water can't drain and hence spills on the highway.
Well, deadly landslides were reported in Kerala's Idukki district after heavy rains. 5 members of a family who were trapped under the debris following a landslide were found dead. Debris from the landslide fell on the house of the victims, burying them alive. Rescue forces led by the NDRF.
The Bengaluru idgah matter will be heard by a 3-judge bench of the Apex Court at 4:35 p.m. So in another 2 minutes, that hearing will begin. Supreme Court bench is the new bench is headed by Justice Indira Banerjee and also has Justice A.S. Oka and Justice M.M. Sundaresh. So that urgency that has been talked about by the Waqf Board, by the Solicitor General, the Apex Court, in fact agreeing, the Chief Justice of India had intervened and had said that he will be constituting a 3-judge bench and the hearing will happen today itself. Remember, both sides are of the opinion that there should be an interim order even if the title suit can be settled at a later point. Harish Upadhyay is joining me live from Idgah Maidan. This urgency, certainly, Harish, is to do with the fact that Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations are on and tomorrow is Ganesh Chaturthi. That is the reason why we are seeing this urgency also being shown now.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why Kapil Sibal, who is appearing for the Waqf Board, says that if it's not decided today, if it's left to tomorrow, there will be nothing left. The celebrations will happen. The government has already spoken on how it's in a favorable mood to allow some of these organizations to have Ganesh Chaturthi celebration at this Idgah Maidan. The other point that a few within the Waqf Board have pointed out is that they've already lost a lot of ground legally, especially by not having title papers in their name or taking physical possession of this property. And they believe that if now Ganesh Chaturthi is allowed to happen, then in a way it gives legitimacy to the claim of the Revenue Department that it belongs to the Revenue Department, this ground belongs to the Revenue Department. And that's one of the reasons why the Waqf Board is tooth and nail opposing this decision to allow Ganesh Chaturthi, or rather the government's intent to allow Ganesh Chaturthi at this particular ground, and they want to ensure that doesn't happen. A status quo is ordered so that in the coming few weeks and months they can fight the issue of who owns this property, but for now they want a status quo on this matter.
Yes, when we look at the status quo itself, that's what has been challenged by the Waqf Board, where they say that why status quo is being shifted with the government becoming a party and the government saying that it's all right to allow a celebration from the other community. But the other aspect in this case is also the civil matter, Harish, because this has gone more and beyond the regular law and order issue. What is being said here is the ownership and everything will be taken up. Why is it that we are looking at this argument being put forth by Kapil Sibal that this has to be settled today itself?
Well, for 2 reasons. There seems to be a plan now because they are saying we're okay with organizations or government having Republic Day and Independence Day celebration. There has been a demand that there should be Kannada Rajyotsava celebration in November, and there are others who are saying that you should give this for other celebrations as well. So the Waqf Board believes that it could open up a Pandora's box, and that's one of the main reasons they do not want Ganesh Chaturthi celebration to be given. They are saying do not allow this. Let's also sort out the ownership matter, who really owns it. The other contention that they are having is that it could lead to law and order problem, But then that's something we've already seen the Advocate General of Karnataka stating that the state government will take care of it. You do not have to worry. We will ensure that law and order doesn't become an issue. And perhaps with the kind of forced deployment that's happened today, they're sending across a message that we are ready to have Ganesh Chaturthi celebration here. Law and order can't be given as the reason to deny that. It's merely on what the court thinks about ownership, and we are very clear that it's the Revenue Department which owns it.
Yes.
They're also saying that there was a chance given for the Waqf Board to claim this ownership. They did not come in front of the Joint Director of the Revenue Department and furnish those documents. This happened earlier in the month and July. Remember, ever since the BBMP initially said it owns the ground, later on made a U-turn and said, well, we do not own this ground. Ever since that, we've seen a lot of process happening in terms of the ownership between the BBMP, the Revenue Department and the Waqf Board, but all of them going in favor of the government, in favor of the Revenue Department, nothing much from the Waqf Board. There are serious question marks on whether the Waqf Board traditionally or historically over the last few years, and especially in the last 2 months, has been a little lopsided in how it approached this matter legally in not claiming this Waqf property, or rather not claiming this property as the Waqf Board's.
Harish, stay with us, because while we are looking at this entire issue play out in the Supreme Court, where the hearing, a 3-judge bench is hearing into the Idgah matter related to Bengaluru. In another case, in Hubli Idgah Maidan case, the Karnataka High Court has passed the order and has left it to the discretion of the Commissioner of Hubli. The Commissioner of Hubli Dharwad Municipal Corporation, and he will be deciding on application seeking permission to celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi at the Idgah Maidan, and refers to the order passed by the division bench of the High Court in the Chamarajpet Idgah Maidan case. So the discretion now with the local official, the local commissioner of Hubli Dharwad Municipal Corporation, and if he thinks that it can not lead to, it won't lead to any kind of law and order situation, there has been a go-ahead that has been given clearly here. Hubli Dharwad case is what we are looking at, in which the Karnataka High Court has given a favorable judgment in favor of those who want to celebrate the Ganesh Chaturthi at the Hubli Idgah Maidan. Go ahead, explain to our viewers, can this be cited by the Solicitor General in the Supreme Court, that let this be decided by the Bengaluru Commissioner, Municipal Corporation, just as it has been done in the case of, in the case of Hubli Idgah case?
Well, both of them are slightly different. All the demands are similar. In case of the Hubli Idgah Maidan case, the Hubli Dharwad Municipal Corporation is the sole owner of that property. There is no dispute on it. And the only dispute from the Anjuman-e-Islam, which was challenging this in the court, is that one, it could lead to law and order situation. They also quoted an earlier Supreme Court order which said allow prayers for the Muslim community twice a year. And they said the court hadn't spoken about any other religious activity there. But none of these arguments have been hasn't been taken into account by the High Court in today's order. They have said we'll leave it to the Commissioner of the Hubli Dharwad Municipal Corporation to decide on the applications. Remember, yesterday there was a meeting of the Hubli Dharwad Municipal Council's body, and there was a subcommittee which gave a report, and it was favorable. It in fact unanimously said that if there are applications seeking permission for Ganesh Chaturthi celebration, they should be allowed to do that. And that's one of the reasons yesterday the municipal body in Hubli decided to allow people to celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi there. Well, in case of the Chamarajpet Idgah Maidan here in Bangalore, the division bench already said that we will leave it to the discretion of the government, the Revenue Department, which claims to be the owner of this ground now, to decide on those applications. The government, remember, already rejected some of those applications, but there are still 4 to 5 applications before the government, and the government was looking at it in a favorable manner, and that's when this ended up in the Supreme Court. So now you have the state government saying that we can allow this to happen here in Bengaluru, the Idgah Maidan case. We can allow celebrations for 2 days, after which it will remain a playground, and later on we can decide on the ownership, and that is what the Waqf Board doesn't want. They are saying There is no question of allowing any other religious activity. We believe this is our ground. There should be some discretion for us to use it for our religious activity. Residents here saying that we identify this as a public ground, with the revenue department now saying that this is also their property. It's a public property, and every person, irrespective of the religion, has equal right on how they use it. If you're giving it for prayers for the Muslim community twice in a year, then allow us to have our celebration for Ganesh Chaturthi at least 3 days a year.
Okay, Harish, stay on with us because this hearing is going on in the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Chief Minister of Jharkhand is speaking. Let's listen.
आराम से सर, आराम से कोऑपरेट करिए सर, कोऑपरेट करिए। हाँ तो तुम भी तो चीज मतलब भैया भैया पीछे हटाइए ना।
आप लोग को जानना क्या है, पहले ये बताइए।
कहाँ गए विधायक?
एक माइक किसी का गिर गया नीचे, 24 नंबर नीचे गिरा हुआ है।
ले लेंगे सर, ले लेंगे, आप बोलिए सर। आप बार बार एक जगह फिक्स हो,
ऐसे कोई बात नहीं, ये कोई आश्चर्यचकित और नया परिपाटी नहीं है और ना ही कुछ कानूनी होने जा रहा है। हर परिस्थिति का सामना करने के लिए सत्ता पक्ष तैयार है। कई चीजें रणनीति के तहत कार्य किए जाते हैं। उसी रणनीति का आज आप छोटा सा झलक पहले भी देखा आपने और आज भी देखा, और आगे भी आप कई चीजों को देखेंगे कि राज्य में षड्यंत्रकारियों को जवाब सत्ता पक्ष बड़े तरीके से इनको जवाब दे। धन्यवाद।
सर आप भी जाएंगे?
मैं बताऊंगा।
As if bringing down 200-meter tall towers wasn't hard enough, an estimated 55,000 tons to 80,000 tons of debris left behind from the raising of the Supertech towers now poses a fresh challenge. The demolition, which was conducted by the waterfall implosion technique, left behind concrete rubble, steel and iron. Water sprinklers, mechanical sweeping and smoke guns have all been deployed to mitigate a huge amount of dust. Nearly 7,000 residents who were moved out from neighboring societies on Sunday morning have been allowed to return home. They've been advised to wear masks indoors to protect themselves from the dust.
So what happens to all that debris that's been left behind from bringing down the Supertech Twin Towers? Now, up to 80,000 tons of debris have to be cleared. The company that's got the contract has got it to do it in 90 days. In fact, 50,000 tons of this debris will be used for reconstruction. 4,000 tons of iron and steel will partly recover the demolition costs. In fact, large chunks of the debris will be dumped at isolated places. The remaining debris will be accommodated in basement areas. For the first time in at least 4 years, the US Navy sent 2 cruisers through the Taiwan Strait.
2 guided missile cruisers, the USS Antietam and the USS Chancellorsville, passed through the Taiwan Strait. The US Navy said the transit is a reflection of its commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. This is the first time such an operation has taken place since US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan last month. In fact, Taiwan has become a major flashpoint between the US and China ever since Pelosi's visit. Taiwan is a self-ruled island, but China sees it as a breakaway province. The US abides by the One China policy, which recognizes only one Chinese government and has formal ties with Beijing and not Taipei. After Pelosi's visit, China responded with unprecedented military drills near Taiwan, which included firing ballistic missiles, sending Chinese warships and PLA warplanes breaching the
A three-judge Supreme Court bench has begun hearing the Bengaluru Idgah matter. The apex court bench headed by Justice Indira Banerjee, and it also has Justice A.S. Oka and Justice M.M. Sundaresh on it. Remember, this was a bench that was constituted by the Chief Justice of India after both the sides, in fact, said that there should be an interim order that should be passed immediately. They have also, the hearing in fact has begun already at 4:35. Earlier, a two-judge bench of the Supreme Court had referred the Idgah Maidan to a three-judge bench, citing difference of opinion among the judges. They also had granted liberty to mention the case before the CJI, and it was the Chief Justice of India who constituted this three-judge bench. During the hearing against the High Court order in the matter, remember, the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta had informed the Supreme Court that the Karnataka government had permitted the ground to be used for Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations for 2 days, that is tomorrow and day after. Several districts of Karnataka are expected to see a thunderstorm, accompanied by lightning with heavy rains, and this is what the reason which was cited. Many say that this is more to do with politics. The fact, however, remains that both sides, the BJP and the Congress, are tight-lipped about it. Tomorrow onwards is when the Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations will happen. The Karnataka government has already permitted, and it was challenging the Karnataka government's order that Waqf board approached the apex court, and Waqf board is being represented by Kapil Sibal. In fact, Mr. Sibal is arguing even as we speak. Harish continues to be with us. Harish, when the Karnataka government went ahead and allowed it, the Waqf board says it is their property, the land belongs to them, they are the owners of this land, then how can Karnataka government allow it? Is that a valid argument being made by the Waqf board? Because Waqf properties, as much as I know it correctly, may be the Waqf may be the owner of a property, but when it is in a particular jurisdiction, then the municipal authorities have the right to use those Waqf properties.
Well, here the contention between the government and the Waqf board is on the ownership. They are saying it doesn't even belong to the Waqf board. They are saying that right from the 60s, we haven't had any paper revenue records to suggest that this is a Waqf board property. The government says that the Waqf board hasn't taken physical possession of this property. They do not have any documents to show that it belongs to the Waqf board. They haven't paid property taxes for a number of years. They haven't claimed the kata in the local municipal body, that's the BBMP. They are saying even when this case recently came before the joint director of the revenue department, they did not furnish any documents and claim ownership of this property. So they are saying, how is it that now the Waqf board says it's their property? If it indeed is Waqf board property, why is the Waqf board not furnishing any documents at all? Whether it's before the BBMP or the revenue department or the deputy director who called for anyone who claims ownership of this property to submit documents or their claim, they did not submit anything. So the government says that the Waqf board has had ample opportunity to claim ownership. They haven't done it. And we have enough evidence to suggest or to show that this belongs to the government, this belongs to the revenue department, and that's why that mutation has been done in the revenue records. And now since we own this property, it's the public property, and we will decide on how to use it for public good. If there is a large number of people who want to celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi, and we believe that more than religious celebration, it's a celebration of the society and the society wants it, then we will allow such celebration to happen. And the Waqf board is opposing this, saying that we might not have paid property tax, but there are orders and communications between the government in the 60s which suggest that this is a Waqf board property. They're also saying in an order, the Supreme Court had identified that we have rightful ownership of this land. So the Waqf board saying that there are aspects in the 1960s and 70s which indicate this belongs to us, although we might not have officially claimed Kata or the ownership with the BBMP, which is the local
I want to
municipal
understand
body.
from you that this is not for the first time that Ganesh Chaturthi is being celebrated. In all these years, was this Maidan used for other purposes, including celebrations of this nature as well?
Well, it hasn't been used. Forget a Ganesh Chaturthi celebration, even for an Independence Day or a Republic Day celebration, that hasn't happened. And that was one of the main grounds of the residents here, saying that a good 75 years since independence, we can't believe that a ground that's used by public, we haven't unfurled the national flag, and that happened this time round. And now they are saying that since it's a government ground, it's a public property, so we want to have Ganesh Chaturthi celebration. This hasn't happened before, but over the last 6 to 7 years, there have been demands, there have been petitions from the residents to various bodies to allow them to celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi, whether it's with the cops, with the revenue department or the BBMP. But the fact that none of them had any clarity on who really owns this land, nobody decided on those petitions. The Waqf board now says that there is ulterior motive with the Karnataka government now suddenly this year, just a year before elections, deciding to get some clarity on the ownership of this, and also asking revenue department to look at the petitions or applications seeking permission to celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi. So they are saying that there is political motive here, and if it hasn't been, if these applications haven't been entertained for the last 5 to 6 years, why is it suddenly that the government believes that now it's the right time to decide on these applications?
Yes, but talking specifically about the ownership, what has made, because ownership, or if it is a civil dispute or a title suit, then it will take much longer time to settle it, because there will be documents from both the sides that will be put on the table here. A Waqf board will be submitting its documents, the revenue department of Karnataka government will be submitting its document. Then what really happens to the celebrations tomorrow and day after?
Well, that's precisely what the government is saying in the initial submission that they made before the two-judge bench today, saying, well, allow us to have celebration tomorrow and day after. From the third day, this would be a playground, and the title dispute can be heard by the Karnataka High Court, which is pending before the Karnataka High Court, in fact, could be heard at length in the coming few weeks and months. But there is a fear within the Waqf board here. They are saying that if we today allow Ganesh Chaturthi celebration to happen, then it kind of gives some sort of a legitimacy to the claim of the revenue department that this ground belongs to them. The second point that they're making is that it opens up a Pandora's box. Tomorrow someone might come and ask for a different kind of a celebration here, and their claim takes a hit that this hasn't been used for any other religious activity. In fact, the other argument many Waqf board members are making is, they're saying that there is a structure here, the idgah structure here, and that is what gives legitimacy to the Waqf property, that this has been used for a number of years for prayers, and that structure is there, and it clearly shows that the Waqf board has used it for a number of years and decades for prayers, and it hasn't been objected. That itself is an example that they had possession of this, but the government really not buying that argument so far.
Yes, it's an interesting argument that is playing out in the apex court. Kapil Sibal read the order of the division bench, and he said, it appears that there is a dispute. Then Mr. Sibal goes on to say, suddenly they wake up in 2022, of course referring to the point being made by Harish there, that why did the government try and grant permission only this year, keeping in mind the elections of 2023. Then the apex court tells Mr. Sibal, was any other festival held here before? Mr. Sibal responds, as the lawyer representing the Waqf board, no. Then the apex court tells Mr. Sibal, or asks from Mr. Sibal, who is representing the Waqf board, is your grievance against a particular festival or for any other use? The court says it's a piece of land. Mr. Sibal says it is a idgah land. Then Justice Sundaresh is saying, is your objection only to the particular festival tomorrow or all after that? Mr. Sibal then is taking the court through the facts, is what our reporter inside the courtroom is telling us. So this is happening in the apex court even as we speak. The hearing is on. 3-judge bench is listening to this petition, and an interim order is what the Waqf board party is seeking. They are saying that if the government has given permission for celebrations for tomorrow and day after, this is in violation of what they say. It is our land. The government has to seek permission from us before granting a permission of celebrations of any other without seeking our permission. This is playing out in the court. Mr. Sibbal going on to argue what he says is the fact of case. The apex court is reiterating and asking again and again, is your grievance against a particular festival or for any other use? Then the apex court has also asked the Waqf board, is your objection only to the particular festival tomorrow or all thereafter? This remains our top focus here on CNN News 18. Ridhima will be taking this forward on the other side.
All right, so that's the big story we continue to track here on CNN News 18 at The Nation at 5, and this is a crucial hearing happening by a 3-judge bench at the Supreme Court of India after a division bench at the Supreme Court, a 2-judge bench at the Supreme Court could not reach any conclusion. This is a challenge that the Waqf board has made at the Supreme Court, saying that the Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations cannot happen at the Idgah Maidan. On the other hand, we also have the local municipal corporation which is arguing that this kind of land, the title of the land is disputed and the Waqf board does not have a sole claim to it. And meanwhile, till the time the title is decided, they should be allowed to hold such festivities. Harish continues to be with us on the broadcast. Harish, as we discuss what is happening in the court, we have Mr. Kapil Sibal. He's going to repeat all the arguments that happened just an hour ago before a 3-judge bench, and we are likely to get some orders. Help us understand what transpired at the High Court. What is the genesis of this entire litigation, which is knocking the doors of the Supreme Court today, and this is the second round of hearing which is happening.
Well, at the crux of it, it's a property dispute.
Yeah.
The Waqf board claims that the Idgah ground belongs to the Waqf board. The government over the last few months has changed its stance. It says this belongs to the revenue department. It's a government land. And now the Waqf board says, no, we do not think so, and there should be no religious activity allowed here till this ownership dispute is settled. The government says, well, it's already settled. The revenue records are changed. It belongs to the revenue department. The division bench of the Karnataka High Court has allowed us to decide on the applications seeking Ganesh Chaturthi celebration here. The Waqf board opposing it tooth and nail. Now it's before the 3-judge bench. There are two crucial aspects that will be debated here. One, the Waqf board is opposing any religious activity here, saying that all along, historically, we've just had this being used as an Idgah ground and used for prayers by the Muslim community twice in a year. That should continue, that shouldn't change. And we will discuss, or rather we will have the courts decide on the ownership matter in the coming few months and weeks. Till such time, there should be a status quo, which means that it should be only used by Muslim community for prayers twice in a year, for nothing else. Okay. The board says they are fine with this ground being used for Republic Day and Independence Day, nothing else. The government says, well, it belongs to the revenue department. Let us decide how we use it.
All right, Aish, stay with us on the broadcast. I'm going to reiterate for our viewers what exactly is happening at the court right now at the Supreme Court of India. Let's take you through the arguments which are panning inside the Supreme Court before a 3-judge bench. Mr. Kapil Sibal, the senior advocate appearing for the Waqf board, is arguing, and he says that so far in the history, no other festival has taken place here. When questioned about by the bench that is it the first time that such a festival is being proposed to be celebrated, he further says that Idgah Maidan is the property of the Waqf board. Character of the Maidan can't be changed. Any Waqf property once given to Waqf is irrevocable. The character of it cannot be changed. That's the Islamic law, and that law is recognized under the statutes of Indian Constitution. So if they don't have papers, but they are saying by their possession, by their continuous use, they can establish that this is a Waqf property. No other festival has happened. If you allow Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations, you're going to change the character of the place. Harish continues to be with us on the broadcast. Harish, I keep reiterating on this, but this facet is very, very important. They say that the ownership or perhaps the trusteeship of this particular piece of land has been with the Waqf Board since 1820, and it has been a perpetual succession that the Waqf Board and different nominees have had over years. Then how come they don't have the tax papers? How come their name is not there in the revenue records? It's being also said at the court that suddenly, in the last 2 years, this dispute has emerged. And in 2022, the local municipal corporation is making this claim to make it sound like that this kind of dispute hasn't really existed historically. Is that the correct position?
Well, there hasn't been a dispute as such over the last number of years. It's only cropped up recently, that's true. But at the same time, one cannot discount that the Waqf Board has been at fault here. If they claim that this belongs to the Waqf Board, they haven't claimed ownership. Remember, for the last few decades, it's been unclear on who owns this property, and that's one of the reasons why every time there was application from anyone seeking permission for religious activity here, nobody decided on those applications because nobody knew who owned this property. The BBMP recently came up and said, well, we've gone through our records, we do not own this property. The Waqf Board said, we own this property. Then the BBMP said, well, furnish the documents.
Okay.
The Joint Director of Revenue Department said, please furnish the documents to back your claims. The Waqf Board failed to do that. And that's when the Revenue Department said, well, we own this property since nobody has claimed this as such, and we have a few records to show that it was with the Revenue Department. They officially claimed to be their property. The Waqf Board yet to furnish anything that backs their claim. They are saying there are communications between the government departments which indicate that this is a Waqf Board property. They are saying there was a case in the court where this is referred to as the rightful property of the Waqf Board, but no clear title deed to suggest that it belongs to the Waqf Board. And many within the Waqf Board and the community are miffed with the Waqf Board for not safeguarding the property. There is absolutely no physical possession is what they're saying. The only thing that perhaps backs their claim is that there is a idgah property here, and there are prayers that have happened for a number of years, for at least 3-4 decades, at least twice in a year.
Yeah, exactly. And Harish, these facts become very, very crucial when you talk about a legal battle of title which is happening. You don't have a property deed, you don't have any kind of revenue receipts. How are you going to establish your ownership of the property? Because it's a Waqf property, a property of a special nature. So can the conducting of prayers perpetually for all these years, over 100 years, more than 100 years, can that establish the claim of the Waqf Board? Taking that question to Naveen Chomal, who's an advocate joining us on the broadcast. Tausif Ahmad Khan, who's an advocate and political analyst, is also with us on the show. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast. Naveen ji, coming to you first. How much of substance do you find in the claim of the Waqf Board? They might not have the title deed, they might not have the revenue receipts or the papers as the local corporation is claiming, but they're saying that for more than a century we've had this Maidan with us. It's the property of the Waqf. We hold prayers here, and never ever has a religious festival of the nature of a Ganesh Chaturthi or any other Hindu festival has been celebrated here.
Ultimately, the whole issue will come down to the point that if you are claiming your ownership, prove your right. Just because for a long time the Muslim group has been worshipping there. Of course, they have also been worshipping on the days of Eid and for namaz only. It is not a proper structure over there of a masjid over there. So kindly appreciate when the Waqf Board doesn't have any property of their own.